My name is Katarina Papazisi, and I am a 2026 artist resident at the Sam and Adele Golden Foundation for the Arts. I mainly work with oil on canvas, watercolor, monotype. Basically all my work is how to bring the figurative together with the abstract. So I'm experimenting with how to make the body be a gesture or the gesture become a body. I started working with videos from gymnastic competitions, and I started drawing the movement first because I'm working on this idea of competition and movement and change, is how to combine the acrylics with the oil paints, which is something that you're not supposed to do. Especially in the monotypes, I think it's very interesting because the two mediums fight each other. So when you put them together, very interesting events begin to form. The water that is pushing the oil away, and I combined this with the movement of the gymnasts. I saw them as competing with each other. The process is very experimental, and there are so many variables that you have to take into account. So you don't really know what will come out. But this is the adventure for me, to discover what will happen. The most valuable part of all this was the testing of the different surfaces. Because although it took a long time for me to prepare all the surfaces and then to test them, it actually brought me to a point where I realized things that I wouldn't have realized otherwise. And I think that everything that came out in this residency was because of testing surfaces. The way I approached the surface has changed. I was interested in the question of time, for example, even from before, but I was approaching it through, for example, sanding the canvas. But here I found this way of having two different times together in the same surface. So I think that this was a very important revelation, because there is one temporality of the drawing I do in watercolor and the drawing media on the cold press ground, and then I put the layer of the medium and I paint on top of that with oil, and if I wipe it off, then the drawing is revealed. So the two come together and there are very different layers that help you go back in time in the painting. Another thing I wanted to do here was to make the materials embody certain concepts. So the fight of the materials talks about competition. The fight of the colors also. I felt the need to explain it in language. I felt the need to invent a concept around it. But perhaps the way to explain it is through the materials. Anyway, this is it.
My name is Purvai Rai, and I'm a 2026 artist resident at the Sam and Adele Golden Foundation for the Arts. I think as an artist, I've never committed to one material or medium or even a subject for a very long time. So every time I was changing the theory that I was working with, or like the experience or history I was working with, I had to pick a new substrate. And the farmers' protest that happened in India, that naturally took me to oil painting, because I could work the surface for a longer period of time, the way like a farmer works in his field for a whole year. So for me, canvases became where my body could move. The first thing I did was I went to my ancestral village and I told the farmers there to teach me how to farm. And they started telling me all these stories about how things used to be. So when I did go and do farming, to actually go and then have to plant it and do that every day from morning to evening, I was like, this is crazy. What it asks for the body and attention, and basically all aspects of you gets consumed. So this is the ground version of the rice hull. I was adding pan pastel into this to create colors. So once the rice is harvested, the next planting season is immediately after, so burning the field down is just a quicker way to clear up the landscape. Over here, I've bought the carbonized hull on Amazon. So that was interesting because like in India, you don't get like carbonized hull. Like, what is that? So I started doing my research, and then you understand that carbon actually is in the soil and plants need carbon to grow. So then even thinking about the role of carbon became an important question, because back at home it is a huge contributor to air pollution. We always talk about carbon as having a negative impact on living things. But then it's interesting to see how carbon is infused into the soil for agriculture purposes. So I've been reading a lot about carbon, and I love carbon. The central point of my work is my ancestral home. It was basically this structure that was built when my ancestors purchased this land. They acquired it from the British, and the first structure that they ever built was for the storage of farm tools or the actual produce. So this building then, of course, was left abandoned after partition, and my family stopped farming, and now it's a home. But when you actually understand the history and you understand the structure for the purpose of harvesting to being able to distribute it. So now when I'm evoking structure, I'm trying to evoke like the history of how architecture in this landscape came about, because the canals were built because they wanted to start farming. I think the first step is I'm making this up, I think. Sometimes I feel like I have an image that I want to make, and usually when I have an image, I can't make it. What I think I want to do versus what I can do sits outside of how my hand works. And therefore materials help me to discover, and that's how most of my material discoveries have happened. Like something goes wrong, that chance only happens when you make a mistake.
My name is Braxton Garneau, and I am a 2026 artist resident at the Sam and Adele Golden Foundation for the Arts. I was first introduced to a bitumen-based product in my undergrad as a stop-out for lithography. And I just thought the materiality of that product was fascinating. And then a few years later, I went to visit my grandparents in Trinidad, and they took me to La Brea, which is the largest naturally exposed lake of bitumen in the world. And all these bells went off, seeing the material in a natural environment and realizing it's related to the hydrocarbons that we have in Alberta, where the extraction process is vastly different. It linked the place that my grandparents were from to the place that I currently live. So yeah, I harvested some of that asphalt. I brought that back home and started integrating it into my paints. And for me, it functions as a conceptual and physical binder. I've always been interested in dressing up. I love a costume. I remember early on in my life going to the carnival festivals that we had in my city, seeing my grandma come down the street in these elaborate costumes. Carnival's roots was it was scrappy, it was a protest. You made costumes with what you had access to. Raffia, canvas, rice bags, molasses. It's a very neutral palette that you're pulling from, and I'm often referencing that in my practice. This is an experiment. This was definitely me coming out of my chromatic comfort zone. I'm easily overwhelmed by high chroma color. I mean, this is still quite neutral, but I was here. I was introduced to so many pigments, names of pigments I'd never heard before, and I needed to just push something out. It was great. It was freeing. I had forgotten how much emotion you can suggest and communicate through the use of color, and it's something that I want to now reintegrate into my less chromatic practice. I'm very interested in the hybrid. I think it reflects my own journey with self, my own identity. I'm a Afro-Caribbean kid who grew up in the Canadian prairies. And so again, very seemingly disparate cultural elements present in one individual. And so it's this blending of the unexpected, human forms, animal forms. Very fascinated with the idea of a transformation. Cultural transformation, psychological transformation, transformation physically through the adornment, and applying, a human face that's adhered in a way that references a mask. I think the most valuable elements of my practice were all the result of play. I grew up drawing animals. That was my thing. I loved to sit outside and draw birds and snakes and catch frogs. And then I shifted into just figurative works portraiture. And I think I'm revisiting a lot of play from my early childhood. I find it very satisfying and authentic to approach a work in a very loose gestural way with a very refined high level of rendering. It's been incredibly valuable to have a month of time just dedicated to exploration. I think as an artist, a deadline can kind of take precedent over exploration. And I'm excited to integrate all the things I've learned into my practice moving forward.